Canonn Faction News. Biscuits inside.
A good relative time part to you all. I'm Cmdr Larzok, and welcome to the Canonn Faction News discussion panel. Repairs are complete after last week's interview with Dr. R. Canonn put us out of commission for a time. The Tinfoil Line studio is now back up and running, and biscuits have been restocked. First, let's start off with the Ruins mapping project being run by Commanders Demafi and Commander Jayu. Have you guys all had a chance to take a look at this?
Unfortunately, we haven't been able to get anyone from research and development on here since they're very much busy in the bakeries downstairs. We can actually hear them now. But beyond that, since all of the information of all the sites that we've gathered is here, it kind of gives us a better picture that we are in fact getting closer and closer to the deeper parts of Guardian space, where we'll have a better possibility of finding most likely an answer to what direction the homeworld is, if there is one.
Well, speaking of the sector of Guardian space, what do you think of the theory that Reger is actually a centralized part of Guardian society, and that's where they had originated from?
That is one thing I wanted to bring up about this map. From what I can tell, it only lists the systems that sites have been found on. Also, it does not list the systems nearby or what sectors it may be in. That may be a feature you might want to add to this map so that others may be more informed.
Another limitation is, of course, the other sites that were found in between us and Colonia, out in, does anyone have the name of the strange nebula that was
It's
found?
in the Scouty Nebula, a stop on the Colonia Turnpike there.
Unfortunately, it's not exactly the easiest space to get to, especially for researchers that are more focused near the bubble. But,
Yes.
yeah, it kind of throws a whole wrench into our
5,000 light years out there. Yes,
not that much.
It's a good walk.
It's not exactly a hop, skip, and a jump away, but yeah, it's still feasible through some more blessed outfittings. Sadly, though, some of us have to stick around here.
Personally, I see no reason to go to Colonia. Most of my work takes here in the bubble, and I cannot leave it.
I just don't find anything interesting out there. It's all mining and people killing those that mine.
Oh, haven't some people found some fungi out in that area, though?
As great a segue as any. The next topic we had to bring up would be the atmosphereless fungi that have been showing up in nebulas and all throughout Ruin space.
Because the thing is that we never actually got a full-fledged investigation into these. We just found them and then, in true Canonn faction, studied them in the ways of how to cook them or to shoot at them. But beyond that, there wasn't much information that could be found as to where they were found.
It seems that Canonn always has not really single-minded, but a very directional approach, and that normally involves an advanced discovery scanner and some lasers.
Sadly, I don't believe that we should be shooting the fungi. Whether or not it is sentient or not shouldn't really play a part in that judgment.
It's a little bit late for that now.
Well,
Of course.
Concerning to how we actually handle with a lot of the relics on some of these Guardian sites that can't be extracted except by blowing them to bits and then picking up a piece of them and then using that as a way to... obviously,
shoot it for
directed,
science.
violent
There are
archaeology.
things that must be done, and shit
Yeah.
happens in space.
You have to break.
Of
You
course.
have to break a few relics to make alien data.
That's true.
Another interesting thing is there's only been 2 sites of these bark mounds, as I've heard them referred to from now, I find that interesting that there have only been 2 found since the public release of fighter technology to the general public. There is one in the California Nebula right next to the McTurner base.
Now, you guys are just killing it with the segues tonight. I appreciate the help. That brings us to the Rican protests. Dr. Ashcroft, you are leading these protests, as far as I remember from my reports. What do you have to say about developments there?
I am indeed leading them, and the protests are proceeding along quite well. In fact, just today we have decided to expand our zone of operations to include the Hodak and Quator systems. In addition, we will now be assisting Rican's competitors, Mastopoulos Mining Incorporated.
Now, what exactly is the true purpose of this, if not to just cause random mayhem? Because you're not just affecting Sirius here, you're affecting a lot of other, corporations that are just trying to coexist, and on top of that, free pilots like myself that have to go through the whole fact of waiting hours on end simply to be able to dock in a station.
The main goal of this protest is to get Riken to release the permits to the Col 70 sector so that we may continue our research on the unknown probes. Unfortunately, there will be collateral damage within this protest, but that must occur in order for us to reach our goal.
Very easy for someone to say if you're already docked in station. I'm just not entirely on your side there, Doctor.
I apologize if I have caused you any inconvenience. However, I assure you, the end goal will be all worth it.
Let's hope so.
Isn't that where the UP's point is towards goal 70? Something there?
That is correct.
Yes,
according to the research, they merely use the distance between a certain system in that sector as well as Merope as a ratio for measurement.
And when it comes to interstellar navigation, usually having a general point of origin is necessary for any type of navigational system. The same way that we use the center of the galaxy, Sagittarius A, and our distance from it in order to relate our position from that into Earth. Which kind of begs the question as to why exactly they're using that spot specifically. And yeah, the same way we were able to find that, all the investigation that led us towards Maya. There were a lot of things that were pointing us there.
It may just be their 0 point is in Col 70.
Same way ours is Sol.
As ours is Sol.
Well, I'm not entirely a xenobiologist here, so I can only go by the engineering standard of it would make sense if it was, but I can't back it up. Since my ship has been parked outside station...
You two need to settle this in some other way.
Well, of course, there are the other arguments of reports from people who have attempted to jump into these systems, and the hyperspace systems merely reported that it was unable to hyperspace at all. It couldn't even start the drive. It couldn't do anything, which is an extremely interesting thing, I find. Perhaps what's more needed than a permit is a technological advancement, especially with Sirius's recent acquisition, well, not too recent anymore, of this metadrive company that could potentially bypass some form of defense system that whatever the creators of the UPs have set up there, the probes.
Now, of course, I have to digress, and we can't say that the UPs may have been created, since a lot of things point to the fact that they may have been biologically grown. So we may need to consider the possibility that we're not dealing with so much an advanced machine as it is an actual organism that's born in space. Do I have anything to back that up solidly? Aside from some surface scans and from the possibility that their entire existence is biological, not very much. But it becomes far more clear to see these things as just wild animals in their environment than it is to think that these are scout probes from another faction or another type of organism trying to scout us out.
Well, of course, but isn't that something that the Guardians themselves have done, was biologically engineer organisms to carry out certain purposes for them?
Yes, apparently they were capable of growing a beast simply to make the most perfect steak. And you know what? Lucky civilization that's able to come up with that. Sadly, as a guy who's been living on protein packs for the past couple of weeks, I can concur.
Is that due to not being able to dock at the station?
I'm looking at you, Dr. Ashcroft.
You can always go to another system.
I can't. I have no fuel. You know what? I really don't want to get into this.
Isn't that what the fuel rods are for?
I can't exactly say what I'm carrying in my cargo hold, but it has nothing to do with this, and it has nothing to do with anyone else's interest. Thank you very much. I can dock and stay.
So you are upset. You're upset that you cannot get into the station to drop off your illicit cargo?
I have no idea what you're talking about illicit. That is libel.
Totally not carrying slaves.
Oh, good God, no. That was maybe at a younger age. I'm too old for that now.
Well, I'm sorry, but you will have to wait in line.
I know. We've been in line for a week.
It's a line where people are just standing there, and there's a bunch of people at the front of it not doing
there
anything.
is a line here. I have a few Legcon Type 9s in front of me. I have a freaking Gudamaya behind me. There is a line, okay?
They all honking
A
their
line of
80
people out of
pants.
fuel who, even if the landing pads were open, couldn't dock because
they
they're out
can't.
of fuel.
They can.
See, fuel rods can keep you fueled. Don't worry, I won't let you all die.
If you hired,
That's a
50 of
very
them out,
convincing. I won't let you die there.
I won't let you die.
If it wasn't for the fact that I have a fully capable bar in the back end of my Anaconda, I would have lost my mind. So yes, you can wait it out. But again, not happy.
Yeah, maybe you
Well-
should go visit those new space bars that have reportedly been found in certain systems.
I would love to. Unfortunately, I can't.
Well, if you're angry, maybe you should focus your anger on Riken. All they have to do is give us the permits and we will end this protest.
He can't focus his anger on Riken because he can't dock at the station and join your protest.
You have long-range comms.
Speaking of long-range comms, I have picked up news about apparently Prism needing a large amount of tantalum to be brought in.
Ah, yes.
God.
Supposedly, according to reports, the faction Lauren's Legion is associated with that.
Isn't Prism one of the largest producers of tantalum?
Yeah, that's
Yes,
what
it
I
is,
thought
but it would seem that they couldn't exactly produce enough.
Now, from an engineering standpoint, which is why I brought this in, because I was curious about this, isn't tantalum used for an almost a-specific reason when it comes to shipbuilding?
Yes, it is.
Frameshift
Frameshift drives in particular. The official statement from the organization states that they have experienced a huge spike in demand, and their facility at Huron's Anchorage is already running at full capacity. So to satisfy their clients, they will need the help of the galactic community. Fortunately, they are in a position to offer generous premiums to pilots who deliver tantalum to Huron's Anchorage in the Prism system. The campaign began 2 days ago and will continue to run for a further 2 weeks. And as per usual with these goals, should the final target be met earlier than planned, the campaign will end immediately.
Now,
That's still
the other
pretty
possibility here is someone's building a fleet,
Of course, that
because
would be,
tantalum is primarily used in frameshift drive production.
For the past few
if an
decades, there's
entire
been kind of like
system
a limitation
cannot-
onto the capital ships that we could build. Wasn't there initially, no more than maybe about a few months ago, an agreement that now both the Empire and the Federal can now build as many ships as they want, as large as they want?
well, that
Yes, I believe the
agreement is
London Treaty was
still-
struck down, or is
It
at
was-
least being ignored by enough member parties or party members that is no longer worth
The London
paying
Treaty
attention to.
is technically still in act, but Hudson has done away with it.
Yeah, the
It's-
building on both sides has
Are you
pretty
sure
much
it was
buried
Hudson?
the London Treaty.
Well,
Either
was it
way,
not Hudson?
politics
It's
aside,
not,
We're delving into politics, and as an
Both-
engineer, I'm
both
just interested in the
sides
possibility of
have-
a better ship.
have increased their fleet size,
I
and
remember
it is
Malaysia
possible
correctly.
a third party has finally decided to build itself a fleet.
If I recall correctly, I do believe it was Denton Petraeus who was the one who was opposing the London Treaty.
Yep, he has built his fleet. He paid me well to help me build his fleet, and
that must have been.
I'm
my
okay
mistake
with
then,
that
Scarlet.
because Hudson paid me just as well.
I can attest to that. Like almost every other Canonn pilot, we kind of take work where we get it, and yeah, they pay well.
For Mercs.
And I'm beginning to wonder if the Alliance has finally decided to get in on the game.
Which would
To see
be
what kind of
much
ship the
welcome,
Alliance
as
shall.
Federal ships and Imperial ships are both absolute dreck, just absolute dreck.
I disagree.
Yes,
But
of
we
course,
will
the
not get
Federal
into that
sympathizer who's holding up the line, as always.
You
Well,
two need
you also have to
counsel,
remember
like,
that the Federals are the ones who have withheld the initial knowledge of these unknown artifacts from us,
And to be
no
That
one
honest,
is another
will
matter in time.
say withheld.
as well as the Martian relic, of course.
I feel like the Martian relic went from being an amazing, amazing thing very rapidly to being just another possibly alien device. It doesn't feel very special anymore, aside from the fact that it was on Mars.
well, any technology sufficiently advanced enough is indistinguishable from magic. So there comes a
Magic is
point.
nonsense.
Well, so is the fact that as a species we're able to travel from one side of the galaxy to the other. That doesn't stop us from doing it.
No,
And
that is
mere
perfectly
hours.
within the realm of
That's
physics.
because it's magic.
It's within the realms of physics in the way that we've actually shaped the universe to our whim. We're translighting between different points all the way out to, let's say, someplace like Beagle Point without suffering the catastrophic situation of dealing with relativistic effects of, well, let's face it, never being able to come home. We've surpassed the curse of being Ulysses, and now we gallivant around the galaxy, holding up the line.
You just can't let that go, can you? You just can't.
I got enough Levy and Brandy in order to be able to let that go, but I can't get to it. Not yet, anyway. So,
Perhaps you should come down to Prism. Yeah, the view's quite nice from over here.
now, of course, I do have to give one update as to my previous working location of Maya, that there do seem to be rumblings of something happening. There seems to be some type of a military buildup or the possibility of even greater, confrontations between both the Anthill mob and anyone else who wants to bring in some type of influence. I can only say that simply because the amount of work that's been available by all factions there is staggering. In fact, it reminds me of the old days of Sothis. It's a hell of a place to be right now if you want to make a quick buck.
I was there, I think, like 3 times, and every single time I was there, I was only there to look at barnacles, and then I just kind of left.
And I definitely suggest stopping by Obsidian Station. They have good contracts, and on top of that, they have a pretty good bar.
They have alcohol distilled from metal alloys.
You don't ask what it's distilled from. In fact, that's actually on the top of the door. You don't ask.
Is it like Jacques' distillery that was on top of his frame shift drive or whatever it was?
You don't ask.
You don't ask.
Along with where they get their protein delicacies, because trust me, there is no cow within a 300 light year radius.
Well, do they get it from
Very rapid shipments.
Do they get it from those unknown ships that have been reportedly pulling people out of hyperspace? Do they just
wait a minute.
kill those and butcher them for their meat?
Have we had any further developments on those?
We actually have had a
do
further
not
development
believe
on that. Unfortunately,
Oh,
it has
have
led to
we?
very little. For example, in the System 64 Artimus, we did have a pilot be interdicted and record the entire event. Now, this system is only a few dozen light years from the bubble. It's the first time we've seen any activity of this unknown ship type or interdiction method that we still plainly don't understand happen anywhere outside of the Pleiades. I believe you all remember about a multiple set of instances around the Pleiades where we had many commanders stopped dead in the middle of nowhere, dragged out of witch space by these large...
Yes,
it was in
it
January,
happened
yes.
to me as well. Now, my question is, why is it that all powers are simply ignoring these reports?
Well, I assure you, they are not ignoring them. In fact, I would not be surprised if they are preparing for possible attacks. So that's what I would be doing, at least. We do not know the nature or intention of these alien species.
And the last thing a military power needs to do is to instill in its people or instill in its enemies the idea of the possibility that they can't defend against something. Followed that up with an investigation that we did. CFN did go to 64 Aratus. Unfortunately, we weren't able to find much because the system is currently at war, and not exactly a good place to start asking questions. We did some follow-up with a couple of other corporations that may have had something to do with it, but it led to nothing. It may have just been a random thing of chance. And unfortunately, without any further confirmation, all we can say is they're getting closer.
Well, I don't know anything about that corporation, but I have been reviewing the footage from many other pilots, and I have noticed something odd. If you pay close attention and you look just near the cockpit, there's a strange mechanical-looking device attached to the outer hull of the ship. I have yet been able to identify it.
Now, the other strange thing is that in some interdiction instances where we've had pilots actually keep their head about, they've been able to scan, and they've been able to find relational scans of what might be a drive, what might be, let's say, a weapon system, what might be this or that. Mind you, they're scanning artificial systems that don't have the same meta tags that our systems do, the same way we're able to pick up an engine trail or what constitutes a reactor, etc., on another ship. So that means that they are on the same level of technology, if not in the same direction. So we are dealing with ships. We're not dealing with how some people may think an organism, or how I thought originally.
I noticed that as well when I was looking at it on my scanner panel, and it had actually noted a few completely blank subsystems that had no known name.
Now, the subsystem scanner goes purely by energy or radiation that's being given off things, and then tries to correlate that to what type of mechanism would give off that type of radiation. So it kind of begs the question as to what these things that are giving off radiation, what they're for, or if they're just other parts of whatever these ships are.
More since their internal components, I am concerned with how they are able to disable our ships so easily. As it stands, I am currently running tests on the unknown probes who exhibit similar behaviors, and I am hoping to develop some sort of definitive countermeasure against this, so that one day we might be able to use this in the field should we need to.
Well, one theory in that department is that they've encountered us before and have learned to deal with us as a race, as a species.
And as much as I'm a proud wearer of the propeller-donned aluminum foil protective head covering that is given to all Canonn pilots, unfortunately we don't have anything close to valuable or viable to be able to connect that.
The thing that caught my eye about them was more or less how they moved and how they interacted with our space, because it seems like they aren't from our space. They don't have traditional what would our drives be? Reaction drives.
Their propulsion mechanisms are somehow gravitic in sense. They're not giving off.
They're pushing out a wake.
Although rumor has it that they live in witch space, so their technology may be operating on a different line of physics than that within our galaxy.
Well, from our understanding, that should be impossible. But, yeah.
Now, speaking of which space, I have noted a couple observations in my last trip back through it, and if your cockpit is blown out in combat, you wouldn't really usually be able to hear much. But in witch space, however, you can hear pretty much all of the normal sounds that you would hear with a cockpit without any dampening of the noise, like you would hear without atmosphere.
Now, that's kind of like a back and forth, because there are some noises that are translated into your I guess, ear holes, I guess. It's supposed to be a representation of different types of radiation that are supposed to be around you. It's part of the interface, if my understanding is correct.
It's like why the advanced discovery scanner, or not, the surface scanner gives off different chirps and chimes when you're scanning different types of planets.
Or why if you use the system scanner, it gives you the everyone's favorite honk.
Well, as I've read it, they've done during the research and development stage for our entire suit and helmet and cockpit layout, they figured out that if there was no sound or no representational sound inside the cockpit, the pilot would eventually succumb to space madness rapidly.
Before the advent of the biscuit.
Yes, because things were just it overwhelmed the animal mind to not be able to hear things. So our sensors were basically extended into our bodies this way through the helmet that we all wear, courtesy of Runlock Industries.
Now, back to that unknown ship for a moment. Another thing that I've noticed is the weight is completely... your systems cannot parse it when it is scanned. It is merely noted as unknown.
It also shares a lot of similarities with capital ship jump systems. For example, when a capital ship comes in, you actually see a tear in space-time, which is an unfortunate after effect of such a large mass passing through witch space. This, on the other hand, is not exactly that massive of a ship, if it is a ship, or whatever it is. Whatever it is, it propels through space. It technically falls into the same category as a ship, but it is not as massive as, say, a capital ship.
My little theory regarding that is that it doesn't actually work like our drives do in a simple point A to B format. Rather, it jumps into its space with no direct endpoint and is able to freely fly around it.
Which naturally goes against a lot of our understanding of witch space, which is technically, from our point of view, that shouldn't be possible.
I've seen a lot of comparisons to oceanic or water-based life in that these things come out of whatever they're, like, above the water would be into us. We are the ocean to them. They move around by pushing off of space itself, and then they almost like I don't think we should call it a wake. I think we should call it a ripple. When
Do
they
you
wake,
mean
'cause
like
it's almost like them going out?
like
into
an
the
old
water.
Earth dolphin
Yes.
breaching the surface?
Yes.
Actually, this would be more
That's
along
what-
the lines of an old Earth whale. They were much larger versions of something like a dolphin, but if I remember correctly, it had to do with them being able to go incredible depths into the ocean and us losing complete track of them while they were still
Well,
around.
in fact, I believe that is where the namesake of the Sod crew cruise ships come from, the Orca and Beluga and such.
Though I'm not entirely sure if their naming conventions actually make sense, because although I'm not exactly an ancient aquatic biology expert, they seem to be naming things in reverse when it comes to size.
It's actually the same for some Gudamaya ships. The Clipper and Cutter, they're named in reverse as well.
Yes, there's a parking space. Okay,
Well,
move over, refugee ship. This scientist needs to land.
We will free up your bandwidth now, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the Canonn Faction News discussion panel. I'm Cmdr Larzok, and for Commanders Artimus Tau, Lexic Meise, Dr. Scarlet Ashcroft, and Pangolin Wranglin, thank you for joining us all tonight.
Canonn Radio. We wear tinfoil so you don't have to.